Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. We are now at the last session of the National Conference on large-scale integration of renewable energy. The most important one, the valedictory session, which features, a panel discussion with high-powered interlocutors in the energy sector space. They will be talking about, the emerging power market trends, future roadmap for large-scale integration of renewable energy, looking at what has been done and what needs to be done from the policy, regulatory, and technology aspects. The first speaker for today is Mr. KVS Baba. I'll invite him for his opening remarks after giving a short introduction to Mr. Baba. Mr. KVS Baba is the Chairman and Managing Director of POSOCO, or Power System Operation Corporation Limited. He has a diversified experience of about 34 years in the power sector. Mr. Baba comes with a wide range of experience across power system planning, design of EHV transmission system, power system analysis, corporate planning, and project management in distribution system in NTPC and power grid, in addition to system operation, power market aspects in POSOCO. Mr. Baba has been actively associated with large-scale integration of renewable energy, bringing in frequency controls, introduction of ancillaries, and so on and so forth. He's also the chairman of the Indian National Study Committee of SIGRACE SCC2 and has been representing POSOCO in G15. So with that, I'm really delighted to welcome you, Mr. Baba. We missed you in the inaugural session, but we are glad that you are able to join us today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Monali and the entire USAID team. This is definitely a long journey for POSOCO along with USAID team. We have been working a lot on how to integrate renewables, not only doing it, but we believe a lot on knowledge dissemination. That is more important to the entire physical activity. First of all, we have to make the people orient, make understand, and then implement. So these sessions are very, very essential for the entire chain of activities that are required for renewable integration. And we have been discussing for many years. It started with 2015 when the first document came from Ministry of Power, where we seriously worked with them and made an action plan of 15 points covering entire gamut of renewable integration, right from forecasting and scheduling and then to capacity building on various aspects on physical activities, regulatory, policy, and all. So in letter and spirit, we have been doing it, and it is a journey which we have started and it is going on. In between we had set a target of 175 gigawatt, and now it is 450 gigawatts are being the target. So a lot of activities going on, and most important issue which we feel is that we have to respect every institution and lot of initiatives we have to take. The total transition has to take place and total transformation is required. There are a lot of discussions are taking place with the stakeholders. We have to do a lot of sensitization. And one more important issue is that we have been doing from top-down approach. So we have to start from the bottom-up approach also. So we have to start now implementing things from the bottom. Of course, with the help of USAID, a lot of pilots have taken place in terms of forecasting or implementation of AGC or testing. A lot of flexibility, a lot of activities are going on. Now the time now we have to sum up and we have to take it in a serious plunge on how to do it and get it done. The whole things what we require is we have to see what are all the basic important things for the bottom up? Is that first of all, resource adequacy has to be taken up in a serious manner at the state level, regional level, and national level. So the bottom is the resource adequacy. Then we need to define reserves should be there. So lot of activity has taken place. GRIDCO expert committee is there who have discussed a lot on reserves, how to maintain the various kinds of reserves, primary, secondary, and tertiary. And then what is flexibility, how to define, how to maintain. All these are also being clearly defined in the expert committee. And we are eagerly looking forward for the new grid code, which will encompass all these suggestions in the form of regulations and a proper grid code. Now, as everyone knows that we are looking for, while integrating renewables, our demand pattern has changed so much. And so much of change, variation over the seasonality, diurnality and all. So flexibility is the key now for effective system operation. So we have to, our resource adequacy also has to cover all these aspects. I mean, today's panel discussion is that very important is what is to be done, what are the challenges, and what is the progress so far, and what are the road ahead. What is the road ahead? It is a very, very important, and now I feel that more now discussion should move towards the state. Each state-wise we need to discuss what are the concrete steps each state is taking care, or how they are orienting themselves to implement these ideas. Now discussion is, I think, more or less we have conceived the what is right. So more discussion should take place now on the implementation part. I hope your side will come forward and take this along, and maybe we should say that they have taken as a torch bearer, and so we have to move towards to the state and see that how best, how quickly we can implement all these ideas and solutions. And all these things at economy, that is also there. How to give a technical solutions which is economical to the each. We are not a rich country. Each state we have limited resources, so we have to do it in a very systematic manner, techno-economic manner. Optimization, how to optimize the manpower also, and the money also, and funds also. So a lot of challenges are there. So I hope we would, of course, there is no doubt that we will succeed in this implementation of this renewable integration, and a lot of activities going on, including storage, how we should try to encourage the storage, whether it is pump storage or battery. Similarly, flexibility resources on the thermal plant, how to improve the ramping, with what level the technical minimum has to be managed. So much of studies are taking place, and CE has done a lot of studies on the requirements or optimal resource mix by 2030. Now a lot of studies have taken place. Now this is the time now we should go for implementation, and once the implementation means it has to go by state to state. Each state have their own characteristics and complexities. So I think some working group or somebody should see how best now we cannot give a general prescription. We have to give it to the prescription as per the patient. So that is how I feel that now we have to change the level of discussion and take it to more to the ground level. So with this, I mean, opening remark, I would like to thank USAID team for giving me this opportunity to share my views and take this I mean, the torch of renewable integration ahead and reach to the NDC targets and make India great. This is what I would like to say. Thank you, Monali, and the entire USA team.
Thank you so much, Mr. Baba. You made my work a little easier, provided a bit of context on greening the grid and the journey. Thank you so much. And yeah, I should reiterate the support which we got from POSOCO in the implementation and many other stakeholders who will be speaking soon after. So many thanks for that. So quickly, before I hand it over to Suni sir for taking forward the discussion with a very high level panel members we have, I wanted to quickly provide a context on the greening the grid, the journey actually. We did come out with a journey report, a sort of report which will be soon public. But take this opportunity to provide a little bit of context for the following panel discussion. So greening the grid, we started designing when the government of India had announced in 2015 about the 175 gigawatt. And one of the first things which was mandated for greening the grid to do was to work collaboratively with the Indian side to come up with a detailed, rigorous modeling exercise to look at the roadmap. What's the roadmap? Whether the target is achievable and what's the pathway to achieve that 175 gigawatt. And it was a really learning experience for the US side, which was, on our side, it was led by NREL along with LBNN to work collaboratively with POSOCO, which was the Indian lead, along with a number of stakeholders, whether it was Power Grid, CEA, 6 RE-rich states, all of them, all the stakeholders work collaboratively over a 2 years period to come up with that study, the roadmap to pathways to 175 gigawatt of renewable energy. I think that was a learning experience for us also to work. How do you ensure, not only just do a study, but also ensure that the stakeholders are equally involved and are part of the entire exercise and are able to use those modeling tools even once the activity finishes. But that study was also the cornerstone, or it was the kind of a fulcrum for us to design the rest of GTG program, which basically involved the RISE initiative, the central component, where we implemented a number of pilots. I will not belabor about the various pilots which we did, because you've been hearing about many of them over the last today and yesterday. But we did, take up some of the key findings from the study, specifically on flexibilization of coal-based power plants, looking at regional coordination at regional level. So working, working with POSOCO on the NAR or with the or working with CRC on the market redesign. So some of them were a part of the study outcomes. But in addition, we also went into a detailed discussion with the government of India and many of the stakeholders who are here to identify the type of pilots we should be taking up. So the effort itself was a very joint collaborative thing. At every step, we had engaged the stakeholders so that they were equally involved in the not only in the selection but also subsequently in the implementation. Most of the pilots which we did was also with the government of India stakeholders and the pilot partners, including Power Grid and POSOCO. We did work. I take it very valuable suggestion, Baba sir, that we should be focusing on state, and maybe that's the next step for USA to focus on. We did work in the southern region. Lots of pilots were focused in southern region, but then that's definitely, we have to do more on that aspect. I also wanted to take this opportunity to highlight some of the other works of GTG, which may not get, as much as, prime time as the pilots did. So we did a number of research and papers, collaboratively, again, between NREL and POSOCO, some of them including the ramping up study, as well as the paper on the gate closure. There was also a paper on the AGC deployment in renewable energy. So there are a whole, a range of studies and joint papers which came up as a part of this Greening the Grid program, which we have compiled in the final report. And accessing it would be useful. In addition to the national study, we also did state level chapters on the grid integration. So all that is readily available. The other aspect which we did under Greening the Grid is the peer-to-peer partnership with both on the system operator, which POSOCO led, and the regulators partnership, which CRC led. Again, there were a lot of interchanges and exchanges between the system operator, both on the Indian and the US side, both side learning, I hope. But we took many of the suggestions, especially, organizing those intensive boot camps, which we found to be very, very useful for us to have, every stakeholders in the room really dedicated to interact with the US stakeholders. So many of the boot camps were organized. I think we did 18 to 20 boot camps over a period of time. And also similarly on the regulatory side, 2 papers were produced and number of regulatory exchanges were undertaken. So it's been a great experience. Past 2 years were a little difficult with COVID, specifically on the pilot implementation, but then we learned to live with it. We modified, we did many things virtually. We did the go live of AGC and the battery energy storage on a go live on a virtual platform. So those are some of the learnings. But I really look forward to the panel discussion now to hear what next after this. Not only from the larger, very importantly, the power sector perspective, what's more needs to be done, but also from a perspective from coming from, USA, it would be interesting to know that what after this, what needs to be done so that we are able to, better channelize or better support the government of India in our partnership. So I'll just stop there and I will quickly introduce Suni sir, although I'm sure he needs no introduction, but I will quickly introduce Suni sir before handing it over to him for introducing the panel and then taking the discussion forward. So Suni sir is the Senior Advisor, POSOCO, and has over 4 decades of experience covering technical, commercial, managerial, pool governance, regulatory affairs, interconnection, market deployment. And as you can see, lots of items, open access, power exchange, renewable energy certificates, and so on. He has always remained instrumental in fostering the growth of power system operation faculty and building sustainable institutional mechanism to support the rapidly developing Indian power sector. His specialities include power system operation, power market design, and operational regulatory affairs, entire gamut of large power pool, and much more. So with that, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce and welcome Mr. Suni and the entire panel members. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Monali, for a very generous and kind introduction. Thanks, GTG Rise. Thanks, USAID. Great work done. Monali, in a very fast-forward fashion, has covered all what has happened in the last 5-6 years, and it's not an easy job. And the last 2 days, there were excellent sessions. Each session had real wisdom coming out of it. Many experts were there. So now we have reached the valedictory session, but now this is the time. Now we have been doing warming up. Now we need to pick up the speed. So it has not stopped. Now the real speed has to come up. So canvas is too big. It's a large canvas, large country. India is a happening place, happening time. Numbers are huge. 100 gigawatt of RE, 200 gigawatt of load. Very soon we will be touching 400 gigawatt of install capacity. So it's all in hundreds of gigawatts. That's the kind of a dimension which India has. Now, as Monali explained, studies, reports, pilot, capacity building, so many issues have been covered. Be it flexibility, be it markets, be it ancillary, AGC, storage, name it. And all these have contributed towards smooth integration of renewables so far. But now the challenge is even more tougher in future. So I will not take much time, but the point which has been repeated by Mr. Baba as well as Ms. Monali is that the real strength of India lies in states. We now need to do much more work at the state level. I will again come back to that and hope that this panel should take it forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will not take much time. We have 4 panelists. They are experts, very exalted panel, and each of them represent an institution in India. They are great institutions, and you cannot think of a better panel than this. We have Mr. Mrityunjay Narayan, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Power, and the topmost policy decision body. Then we have Mr. Rajput, A.K. Rajput. He's Chief Engineer, Central City Authority, the technical arm of ministry. And then we have Dr. Subir Sen from Central Transmission Utility. Now, all of these organizations have their replica in the states. We have CTU, we have STU, we have central ministry, we have state ministry. Similarly, in the regulators, we have FOR. Similarly, now Mr. Narasimhan, he is the Director System Operation, POSOCO, and a passionate system operator. And as a fold, they have also taking the states along with them. So I will now straight to put it this order, if you all agree. We have up to say around 15:30. So we will give 10 minutes to each of the panelists to say all what he wants to say. You don't have to be bound by any rules because you all are such senior people that you don't need any limitations. So and then we will have question answers depending on how the audience reacts to it. And in the order, I understand Dr. Subir Sen has to leave a little early. So I would first request Mr. Mrityunjay Narayan, and then request Dr. Subir Sen, and then Mr. Rajput, and then Mr. Narasimhan. If it's fine with you all, then we straight go, and I hand it over to Mr. Mrityunjay Narayan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Soni, and good afternoon to all distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I'm privileged to be here this afternoon in this valedictory session organized under the aegis of USAID. And the topic as you have set the context, Mr. Soni, Monali, and Mr. Baba have set the context of the discussion today. Renewable energy integration, large-scale renewable energy integration in the grid, challenges, progress, and road ahead. It's very relevant, important, and topical. As you are aware, India is signatory to Paris Agreement of 2015, which aims to strengthen global response to climate change by keeping global temperature within 2 degrees of pre-industrial level. And India has taken proactive steps and one of the pioneer countries to move forward in this direction. As you are aware, we have nationally determined contribution, NDCs, as we call it, according to which we have to have 40% energy coming from non-fossil sources by 2030. And we intend to reduce emission intensity by 33 to 35% by 2030 and by 2030 from 2005 level. And in order to achieve this, we have set very ambitious targets for ourselves. That is 125 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2022 and 450 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030. We are well on the way to achieve these targets. And we have noticed that on 15th of August 2021, our country has achieved a major milestone in terms of renewable energy. And that is, we have achieved 100 gigawatt of installed capacity in terms of renewable energy. And mind you, this does not include hydro, large-scale hydro. So what I mean to say is that this presents immense economic and environmental opportunity. This 450 gigawatt by 2030. And a lot of effort has gone into this. And because of those efforts, we have come to this stage. As we know that India is well endowed in terms of solar energy. All states almost have solar potential. However, there are 7, 8 states which have been identified, which have larger potential in terms of higher solar installation. And we have had green energy, for evacuation of renewable energy, we have had green energy corridor, especially meant for renewable energy, Green Energy Corridor 1, which was established at a cost of 11,500 crore. Then Green Energy Corridor 2, which aims to evacuate renewable energy from solar parks. And the transmission system for evacuation of 66.5 gigawatt renewable energy is under implementation at a cost of around 42,000 crore. And one of the important factor in renewable energy integration is is intermittency variability. It's largely is highly variable in nature. So forecasting of renewable energy also is important, so that we are better equipped to integrate RE, which is getting generated. And to that end, we have established 11 REMC, Renewable Energy Management Centers so far, and there are further 2 REMCs under construction, one in Telangana and one in Andaman Nicobar. So this is the journey in terms of what we have done so far, and we have achieved 100 gigawatt, as I said. And on demand side also, if we look at this, we are witnessing large scale electrification of energy demands, be it in electrification of energy demand is happening in all sectors of the economy. For instance, railway has set a target for 100% electrification, and also we are promoting electric mobility. Similarly, in household sector, electric waste cooking is being promoted. So the demand for renewable energy is going to increase. And also we have, as you are aware, that we have renewable energy targets set for all the DISCOMs, so that they have to procure a significant percentage, as pre-specified percentage of renewable energy. So on the demand side, a lot of things are happening. However, the intermittency of this renewable energy poses a great challenge. The biggest challenge is for the grid operator. I see Mr. Baba SCM Kosoko is here, so he's the right person to talk about it. So it's a big challenge, in grid on real-time basis, moment to moment, the demand and supply has to balance. And this balance has to be established very meticulously for secure and reliable and safe operation of the grid. Just imagine that 100 gigawatt of renewable energy, suppose, is being pumped into the system, and within a shorted period of time, this this drops down to zero. What is going to happen to the grid? Some of the sources of energy has to quickly take its place, and that has to be done very fast, quickly. And for that we have to have for example, we have to have a hydro, and then battery energy storage system. And we have to address this challenge of renewable energy integration. And we all understand that challenge has other side to it. This presents opportunities also. Opportunities in terms of innovation, opportunity in terms of developing new technologies, and the challenges will have to be concertedly, collaboratively addressed by all stakeholders in the power system: the grid operator, the regulator, the DISCOMs, the CEA, everyone. And I'm sure we are all on the same page. We have had sufficient experience in this regard. And I'm happy to say that the GTG program, Greening the Grid program, in collaboration with Ministry of Power and USAID, has been very beneficial. Let me say that, and it has helped us in understanding the issue, complexity of the issue, and how we can deal with this. We have had several pilots, and I'm privileged to have participated in inaugural of go live of some pilots, and they are very useful. We have had battery energy storage system as a pilot, and also automatic generation control, etc. So these are some of the methods of facilitating renewable energy integration in the system. There are several, there could be several ways of it, and which one is the most cost effective will depend on the situation, depend on the the place, etc. And for a consumer, it's most important that the landed cost of power is as low as possible. Every technology, every intervention that we do has some cost. Some cost. So, as a planner, we have to see that what is the most cost-effective technology. Renewable energy is going to stay, is going to be mainstay of power system in times to come, and we cannot deny this. So, the challenge is that how do we integrate it at least cost possible to the consumer. We have seen that transmission, we have huge transmission capacity added in the system. Now we have we do not have any congestion in the transmission system, and energy can be seamlessly transferred from one corner of the country to other corner. And this has happened because the transmission system has expanded in a big way. However, transmission charges also has gone up considerably. In past decade, we see that transmission charges has grown with a CAGR of 21%. And we talk about transmission charges, transmission tariff per unit of electricity, that also has gone up with a CAGR of 15%. So this is high. So we have to see that how do we reduce the transmission charges, and particularly to promote RE generation. Government has given waiver that RE coming up, starting generation by this time, let's say by 2025 June, perhaps. There will be no transmission charges levied on such RE power. So, but however, the transmission charges will have to be borne by the DISCOM. Some of the persons, some consumers will have to bear this. So we have to see that so far we have developed transmission system, especially for RE generators. However, can we have RE generator at the load near to the load center, which can reduce the transmission requirement and significantly reduce the requirement of investment in transmission sector. So we'll have to weigh various possible options. Can it be closer to the load center, where insulation may not be as high, but transmission charges will reduce significantly. So we'll have to do some kind of cost benefit analysis, whether to establish RE in high RE rich zone where we have a high insulation but transmission charges higher, or to establish closer to the load center where insulation will not be as high, but we include the load center where transmission system requirement may not be as high. So these are some of the issues which we need to deliberate, and certainly states have a very major role to play. Almost entire distribution lies in the hands of the state, and they are significant stakeholder in this. So they also will have to be taken on board. And one analysis was done in the ministry where it was found that around 42 gigawatt of renewable energy addition can take place near the load center where transmission requirement is very minimal. So all these things will have to be explored, and we have noticed that Honorable Prime Minister also has announced National Green Hydrogen Mission. This Independence Day from Ramparts of Red Fort, and that will further facilitate growth of renewable energy. And I'm sure I missed inaugural session of this two-day conference, but I'm sure that this conference, the deliberation that has taken place in 2 days conference must have been very fruitful. And I request Monali to share the findings of this conference so that we can take it forward. So I'm really privileged to be here, and I thank USAID, Monali, and all the distinguished participants here for having given me opportunity to share my thoughts. And I'm afraid that there is one very high level meeting scheduled today, so for which I will have to leave early by say 10 minutes before 3 o'clock. So I wish to be excused, and thank you once again. Thank you once again for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to speak and share my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Narayan. You have covered a very vast, a canvas, very big picture you have given. You did cover about EVs, the cooking, even the green hydrogen. So the questions which are pouring in already, and since you have to leave, let me pose this to you and also to all the panelists. The issue is, how do we take care of 2030 and beyond? Up to this was an easy, relatively easy to integrate. So, how do we ramp up EVs? What are its side effects, the cooking side, and the green hydrogen? Would you like to, address this now or later on, as you feel, Mr. Narayan?
As you have seen that we have seen several methods of integrating renewable energy, and as the demand is going to go up of renewable energy, we have to implement these systems. We have AGC, battery energy storage system, and you must have noticed that Honorable Minister has announced intention to implement 4,000 megawatt hour of battery energy storage system as ancillary service. So all this system in combination, also all the system may not be suitable at every place, but a combination of these will have to be incorporated in our system, the system so as to facilitate this. And I think we are all on the same page. All stakeholders, the Ministry of Power, regulator, and the CA, CRC, grid operator, we are all on the same page. We are sufficiently informed now with the experiences of pilots, etc., and various research models. And I think we are better equipped to handle this situation. And these pilots, etc., these research projects, they have created body of evidences which can be used to make a business proposition and go to the regulator and make it a part of the system. So I think together collaboratively we can handle this issue. Of course, this challenge is very big, but our collective effort will certainly overcome this challenge.
Thank you very much for this positive note that we are all on the same page. We say we are all on the same frequency, and certainly we can achieve that. There is no doubt about it, and we have to achieve this. So now we go to the next speaker, Dr. Subir Sen, and he represents transmission, be it planning, be it coordination with the STUs. And one of the things which renewable integration has really harnessed is the grid. And recently we saw this report from MIT, but India has been doing it very well. So a lot of things to cover on the transmission side that should not be lost sight of, notwithstanding the little higher cost, because it's a very lumpy investment. That's my very conviction. So I will avail this opportunity of telling. But I hand it over to Dr. Subir Sen to please give his thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Suni sir, and good afternoon to everyone. It is my actually privilege to participate in this valedictory session of the 2-day national conference on the large scale renewable integration challenges road ahead, and which is being organized by the USAID to mark the 5-year program on the greening the grid. So obviously, this program has bridged the link between the India and the US side to dealing with the various aspects of integration of variable as well as volatile energy resources in the form of mainly the solar and wind. That has enabled lot of aspects, and we are able to facilitate that the today installed capacity, which is around 44 gigawatt, is coming through the solar and 40 gigawatt is coming through the wind. Because lot of preparatory work has been done earlier to facilitate this kind of intermittent and variable generation resources into the grid, but at the same time, we are able to maintain the grid 3S. That's the safety, security, and stability in every split second. So that is possible because we have taken lot of pre-work activities to facilitate integration of these renewables. There are many things already deliberated upon and discussed by our esteemed previous speakers also. So I will just highlight some of the aspects which still we have to do work to enable that 450 gigawatt installed capacity can be achieved through the renewables by the year 2030. And after that also it will continuously increase because we are in that energy transition path and focus is more and more energy uses in the form of electricity. That our respected JS Ministry of Power has highlighted that it is not only the electricity being used, but electricity is to be used in the other areas like transportation, like in the cooking, like not only this surface, also in the railway part. So a lot of work is going on. But that too coming through the renewables, including the hydrogen, generation of the hydrogen from the green sources, not only the gray sources. So the obviously in our country, like the conventional energy resources, coal and hydro, they are confined into the concentrated pockets, whereas the demand centers are spread across the country. So that basically necessitated us to develop the long distance transmission infrastructure so that the coal in the Chhattisgarh, Odisha, West Bengal, Jharkhand complex, that energy can be transported to the other parts of the country where there is not that much energy resources are there. But we should be able to provide the round the clock, reliable, as well as the quality and uninterrupted power supply to every consumers. So that's basically calls for the development of the long distance transmission infrastructure, and we have developed lot of transmission facilities not only at the interstate level but also at the intra-state level. It is a complete coordination with the ISTS and the intra-state infrastructure. So today that's what we are able to see to meet the peak demand of 200 gigawatt capacity, and this we are expecting by 2022 around 226 and around 340 gigawatt by 2030, and in between around 267 270 by 25. And for that the lot of capacity addition program is being taken, but major energy transition through the clean, green and lean renewable energy sources. These renewable energy sources, though the sunshine is everywhere, wind is blowing everywhere, but the quality of the sunshine as well as the quality of the wind, direction of wind is not uniform across the various places. So they are again confined into the few pockets, like in the western part of the southern region, or in the Gujarat, Rajasthan, and what we called is the cold desert in the Leh and the Spiti Valley. So there the demand is not that much high. So again we have to develop the transmission infrastructure. So that will be required, and obviously that will require the investment in the transmission. So that is also being done as far as the transmission infrastructure is concerned. here there is an issue comes the matching development of the transmission vis-a-vis the generation, because renewable generation is having the short gestation period in comparison to the long distance transmission infrastructure development. So we are planning the transmission infrastructure based upon the potential renewable energy zones and make it in a phased manner development, so that there will be minimum gap between the generation and the transmission establishment. So that part is also going ahead. Now coming to the part of the variability part. Now variability part, we are also managing the flexible resources what we have. So that's what we are able to maintain the grid safety, security and stability as of today also, even with the integration of around 100 gigawatts of renewable capacity into the grid. But in the future, this variability and the balancing resource requirement will increase. So the transmission will play this important role and enabler to enlarge the balancing area by interconnecting the load centers with the various balancing resources. In addition to that, we have to also look after what will happen in the conventional generation. So we are also talking about the energy storage systems. So the more and more work is now to be focused besides the transmission capacity addition, wherever incremental will be required, the energy storage system, whatever be the form it will be, how to integrate that energy storage system so that we can have the resource adequacy and flexibility part for the balancing, including the ramping up, ramping down requirement in a smooth manner. And second is that the deferment of the transmission capacity, the capacity development. So that also can be done, because KSAB is also highlighting that transmission charges is increasing. At the same time, the renewable capacity is increasing. It is a trade-off to maintain that transmission charge is not to increase too much, but the generation capacity will increase. So under that circumstances, we have to think of more and more generation capacity to come up near the load centers, where we can avoid the development of the bulk transmission system. Obviously, so then the cost in the transmission. But at the same time, we have to see that if we invest in the transmission and ultimate benefit which the transmission will give to the end consumers, whether that is getting satisfied or not, that part is also saying. Today we are saying that we have a very vibrant electricity market. If there was not that much transmission network was available, so we have to really think whether we are able to develop the market with almost a single price in the bulk electricity market in most of the occasion, congestion-free power flow, whether it was possible or not. So this part we really have to deliberate upon. So one is the energy storage system. Second is that whether we have to really invest in the transmission or not, because without transmission, if in the greenfield area, the large scale renewable capacity will come up, how this will come up to the transmission level until unless we build the transmission infrastructure. Third point is that because they are the inverter based generations, so how to improve the system inertia. So that part also we need to address this inertial aspect. So obviously this kind of program like greening the grid, so they may give that this insight that what the other countries are also doing across the globe to develop this inertia in the grid, when more and more this kind of inverter based generation projects are coming up into the network. Obviously that needs a techno-economic analysis part is also there, at the same time the technical part. The fourth most important aspect is the regulatory framework. Until unless the suitable regulatory framework will be in place to integrate this kind of resources like energy storage system into the network, how this investment will be realized in the form of the transmission charges. So that part. Second part is that what we are thinking of this how to improve the inertia of this network. So the suitable regulatory framework also need to be placed, where this kind of program greening the grid, so they can also give much of light about how the regulatory framework to be done in this direction. The important part is the complete coordination. Since the generation is in the state, transmission is also coming within the state, across the state, complete coordination will be there. Like when we identify the potential renewable capacity, so there the respective states also to be taken into cognizance, so that a comprehensive potential can be assessed, so that in later on it should not happen that this area is not having that much land, this potential is not there, state is taking development. So that will give the impact to this development or the planning process. So that we have to address from the initial stage itself, where this kind of program will also give. Regarding the battery energy storage system, USAID has also extended the good support for the pilot project which we did in the Puducherry for 1 megawatt capacity with a 500 kilowatt hour energy storage system. So there we took the two aspects as part of the ancillary service measure like frequency regulation and energy time shift. But there the USAID came forward and provided the other attributes that how this can be implemented into this, like dynamic frequency regulation, then the voltage support, peak saving, etc., and they have given lot of live demo with this pilot project also, and we hope that this will give a lot of insights and benefit to adopt in the future as far as our ancillary services through the energy storage systems are concerned. So with these words, we appreciate that USAID for coming up with this kind of program and also giving support to these our energy storage project at Puducherry. And we have also learned a lot from the USAID, this greening the green energy, greening the grid program in association with the Ministry of Power also, where the POSOCO has also played a pivotal role for developing this thing. We must express that our thanks to all of them. And this will evidently help to penetrate more and more renewable capacity into the grid, and we look forward for similar association in future on this kind of path-breaking technology through collaborative effort. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Subir Sen, for giving an overview from the transmission angle. You have rightly flagged the inertia issue, the storage in the transmission, and the need for regulation and a perfect coordination with the states. So we again and again come back to the coordination with the states. So one of the questions which I would like you to address is the cross-border. What is your view on the cross-border? For example, making the larger footprint, larger balancing area is definitely low-hanging fruit. What do you feel about that? And of course, if you can take the question forward, the OSOWOG. Thank you.
Yes, sir. This is definitely, we are also looking forward, and in this direction, already cross-border interconnections are continuously getting strengthened. So that will give not only the enlargement of the balancing area, also to facilitate of maintaining the common spinning reserves, common reserves. So that will also give the economic benefit for both these directions also. So presently, we have the cross-border interconnections. The link capacity is around 4,000 plus megawatt, and lot of transmission interconnections are being developed. So that will be increased by another 3,000 to 4,000 megawatt, maybe in a time of 2 to 3 years time. Furthermore, we have to extend it further, because we have to extend it on those regions where there are variable, there are these balancing resources are there, like hydro resources are there, somewhere in the gas resources are there. If we extend those interconnections, it will give a single grid type of things. So besides the energy transfers, also there are a lot of economics will be there, both the sustainability part is there, and the entire region will see a sustainable development, not only from the physical point of view, environmental and financial point of view. So in these directions, already regulations are there for our cross-border interconnections, and the neighboring countries are also working upon how to enhance continuously. And the one sun, world, one grid already there is a committee and they are working upon on these terms and reference. And obviously we feel so that by before 2030, some concrete strategies and plan will come out in these directions to see that how the various regions reach with different types of balancing resources can be integrated with different new transmission technologies, so that the flexibility in the system, flexibility in the generation, flexibility in the transmission can be done, and more volatile energy resources can be integrated while maintaining the grid stability and safety security part also.
Thank you very much. You have touched very sensitive issues of security, reliability, resilience, and we need to expand our grid. Let me ask you a very focused question. What do you feel about Bangladesh? By which year we would have a synchronous connection, if there is something on the radar?
Yes, sir. Actually, this is under consideration,
Okay.
because we are also planning to establish one link between eastern part of our country to northeastern part via Bangladesh. And while the discussion was there between this government of India and government of Bangladesh, so they told that you take up the implementation of this work, but whenever we feel that we have to interconnect with this line, so we'll draw our own line. So that is not very sure, but tentatively maybe 27, 28 time frame is that. That is as per the present indication, but it is a continuous process, and review is being done continuously. So presently, this is the situation as far as the synchronization of the Bangladesh grid is concerned.
Thank you very much. We do understand that cross-border and OSOWOG are very difficult subject, and but we have to move forward. Thank you so much. So thank you, Dr. Subir Sen. Now I move on to the next panelist, Shri A.K. Rajput. He is from Central Electricity Authority. He has been associated with many research projects, and I would request him to cover the optimal capacity expansion, because the market is no substitute for planning. The apparatus of planning has to work, and that's where the CA comes into picture. So, Mr. Rajput, please carry on.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. I am A.K. Rajput. I am looking after R&D and renewable technology and integration aspects in CEA. As well as I am looking after the indigenization, that is the Make in India part. So my talk will be focused around these few points, plus what are the expectations of the Sunni side. Actually, our basic need is that how we realize that our dependence on the fossil fuel gets reduced, and we also achieve the carbon neutral aim, and we also achieve the sustainable development goal. So one landmark was set before us, that is the 175 gigawatt by 2022, precisely by December 2022. It appears to be quite ambitious at that time when it was planned, but we are hopeful since the 100 gigawatt mark has been achieved, it has been attained. So with the concerted efforts and growing awareness among the society as well as the international community and the policymakers, more and more emphasis will be on the development of the renewable sources of energy in an optimal way, giving them the proper place, which say 10 years before was a neglected field. So now more and more emphasis is there and the importance is there, and everybody is realizing that we have to rely more on the renewable sources of energy. So our plans and milestones are likely to be achieved. I am hopeful. So this is not the only landmark. It is an intermediate step, and now we have been given the target of 450 gigawatt by 2030. Our planning being, that is the integrated resource planning with the proper consultation of all the stakeholders. They are conducting the studies. They conducted one optimal research, optimal generation capacity study, and now I came to know that they are revising it. And naturally, the study should be revised based on the proper set of the data and the latest set of the data as well as should incorporate the latest technologies. There was a time that no one thought that the battery energy storage will be part of our system. Or we will be relying and we will be realizing more and more potential of the pumped storage hydro project. At that time, there are some problem in the pumped storage system also. Some of the pumped storage system which were designed and installed at that time to run in the pumped storage mode, unfortunately, they are not running into the pump mode. That's the problem that need to be overcome, and in future designs, it has to be taken care of, that proper testing be done and their proper care need to be taken. In order to add the capacity into the renewable, we have to depend on the other sources also. There are various technologies available, and those technologies so far has not been recognized as the renewable energy. So we from CA are requesting to MNRE that kindly recognize those sources also as the renewable energy sources, and at least you can add certain part of the renewable. That is one way of adding. Another is optimizing the existing resources, and repowering of the wind is one of the measure which can be taken so that we can add further capacity at least in the field of the wind. At the same time, there is a need of early adoption of the advanced technologies. We lag behind, and what happens when the technology almost become obsolete, we adopt that. But India has to take a step that whatever the latest technology and proven technology are there, they are inducted in the system well in time. At the same time, there is a need not only of the capacity addition, as well as the previous panelists have told, a development of the strong grid and the transmission system. So that is need of the hour. That should be developed. Otherwise, what is happening is some of the stakeholders, particularly the renewable generator, they are facing the problem of the curtailment. And there are other commercial issues also. Sometimes the payment issues are also there. Of course, those are not in our hand. Those are in the hand of the policymaker and drafting the proper PPH for that. So that is a commercial aspect. Intermittency and variability is always there in the system. This is a natural phenomena when we rely on the renewable sources of energy, particularly the wind and the solar source system. So balancing power has to be arranged. So balancing power has to be arranged not only in the conventional way by using the flexible generation capacity of our existing thermal power stations, or the gas-based turbine station, or the pump storage system, or the battery energy storage system. We have to manage the load also. That is one where the role of the smart grid comes, or the distribution automation comes. So lot of emphasis has been given to the strengthening of the transmission system. But I personally would say that at the same time, the distribution should also be equally strengthened. That distribution system should be able to grasp that, to absorb that power, whatever is available in the grid. And distribution system have to be further strengthened because the load characteristics are changing. Earlier, the agriculture load or the irrigation load was supplied during the off time, particularly in the night time or the off-peak periods. But now, since the scenario has changed, and now it is well in practice that during the daytime when the peak solar is there, that the solar rich regions are there, so they are supplied during the daytime. So there is a shift in load, change in load pattern. Balancing could be achieved from the load side as well as from the generation side. And as just Dr. Subir Sen told, that internationally we have to have the support. So it is in our advantage that how fast we develop. Say there is a difference of the time zone also between Bangladesh and ours, and that we can make use of. Here gas resources we can take the support, and whatsoever thermal is idling at our end, through that thermal increasing the PLF, we can provide their needs. This will happen only when the strong transmission system is available, since we have got the adequate generation capacity available at our end. and the resources are available. And particularly this will have the interconnection from the eastern part of the country, where the coal resources are adequate. Lot of controls will be required. What is seen in the system operation, Narasimhanji and Baba Sahab would be aware, and they are facing the problem day and night, that our RTUs and SCADA system, they are not so strong. There is a further need that these type of the systems be improved so that we have the better visibility and we can tackle the safety, security and reliability aspect of the system. But there is one thing also, since that AC and DC generation both are available and the converter technology is being used, there are the power quality issues either localized or on some parts of the network. So power quality issues need to be taken care, and for that proper offline studies need to be carried out, and then some suitable measures need to be taken. I'm again coming to the balancing. National Hydrogen Energy Mission is in place now. We have been part of that also in some of the deliberations and will continue to so. So green energy, green hydrogen can be produced with the help of the solar as well as the wind electricity generation when they are in excess. So it will provide a sort of the stability in the system and the balancing need. Similarly, the EV charging phenomena through the e-mobility promotions of the e-mobility and electric vehicle charging infrastructure will be across the highways and also across the cities, and wherever the EV will be penetrating, maybe in the smaller towns and the villages. So we can devise innovatively the electric vehicle charging infrastructure tariff in such a way that it attracts the vehicle owners to come to the EV charging at the time when there are the off-peak periods. And this phenomena, actually there is one more swapping model also of the electric vehicle charging batteries. So those batteries would be charged at the particular battery charging stations or the centers, and there also they can be brought into the fold of the load management. So this will be a good measure of the load management, as well as it will also solve to some extent the problem of the battery charging, which takes a long time at this time. Hopefully in the time to come, the fast battery charger will come up and the battery technology will improve and the charging will take lesser time. So this realization could be expected by introduction of the new technologies. FACTS devices as well as the synchronous condensers, a proper studies need to be carried out, and wherever required the FACTS devices as well as the synchronous condenser, wherever the opportunity arises, particularly the old thermal power stations, some space would be available, and there these synchronous condensers could be established. They are all located at the distributed locations, because all these devices, say reactive power control devices, they should be distributed throughout the system, not only at the local place. So if the space could be best utilized, the assets could be best utilized in that fashion. Only thing, maybe some policy or regulatory interventions may be required. That is the feeling from CESI. And what happens when the new technologies keep on developing out of the research, they find it difficult the induction, particularly the technology which have been developed indigenously. There are no takers that they get inducted. They ask for the proven experience and all those things. So what should happen? Some sites should be allotted to them so that some development could take place, and say if they have met the technical requirement, they should be allowed to be for operation in the system. So that is one requirement. Then payment mechanism need to be changed in some respect so that developers are not discouraged. Curtailment issue I have touched. And the system has to run and integrate in one manner, using the support of the various elements. That include the support of the energy storage elements in an optimal manner. New sites need to be developed, and exploration should be done that what are the new land sites and what are the new sites for the solar, so that this could be developed. And when these sites are known, the transmission system could be planned and constructed in time, so that there is no mismatch of the timings in upcoming of the generation system as well as the evacuation system. Grid discipline is naturally a very much required item. At any cost, the grid discipline should be maintained and more stringent rules may be required. And basically the awareness and training will play much more important role rather than just enforcing some discipline or the penalty. Maybe the people who are operating and managing the system, they are not aware of the consequences. That may be a remote chance, but it should be done. Similarly, the ramping requirement could be met when adequate controls are there in our generating station, either thermal generating station or the gas-based turbine stations. What has been experienced is that we need not stop or run the gas turbine too frequently, otherwise they lost the equivalent hours of generation. They should be kept in idling position. That has been found better. That is the better option, that they be kept in idling, and ramping up and ramping down could be done fast. Contingency criteria is there in the transmission planning criteria, and maybe the reports are under RE capacity addition. That group was headed by POSOCO expert, and they have submitted the report. So whatever is required to maintain the system contingency, that should be maintained. Load management should be left on the part of the distribution service provider. And one more thing we should not forget that is the cost. Cost of the coal will be rising, but the natural gifts are free. So we should promote and innovate the technology. So what should be the focus area? Focus area should be the policy and the regulatory related drivers, economic drivers, social drivers and social awareness. And what I was telling, that all the sources should be considered. I was touched, though this is the same, this is the theme here is the large scale grid integration of the RE. But we have to take care of the smaller sources and the distributed sources also, because they lessen the burden on the main grid. So they also need to be given due importance. So arrangement of the balancing sources with the help of the neighboring countries is one area. Economical and sustainable production of green hydrogen. In this, we have to take the reliance and we have to do a lot of work, because the high efficiency and high capacity electrolyzers are at present not in India, and they need to be developed. One more area which could help the grid overall, that is the development of the waste to energy sector. It is basically part of the Swachh Bharat mission. And in every city, the waste is there. That waste is to be managed in this managed and disposed in a scientific manner. Whatsoever electricity generated is incidental, so it will serve the two purpose, that is the Swachh Bharat mission as well as the electricity generation. And since it will be at the load center itself, so this will put less burden on the transmission and distribution network. Then when the hydrogen generation will take place and it's coming to be the new fuel of the new generation, then the fuel cell development has to take place at a faster rate. Maybe we need to transfer the technology in the development of the fuel cell. And fuel cell will be another source of the balancing, which I perceive, that if we have got the higher capacity of the fuel cells and at the time of the system peaks, we take the local support from the fuel cells. So that will be another balancing source. So not as a conventional balancing source, but a new type of the balancing source we can perceive. This is the thinking for the thinking in a faster way. Then reducing technical minimum on the thermal power plants. Lot of discussion taking place that how we can best minimize. Development of sufficient power for the evacuation of the infrastructure of RE generation. This basically the contingency criteria need to be changed. Locations of RE plants need to be chosen in such a way that the requirement of T&D work network development is less. Actually, one example I would cite here that because of this Rajasthan bird, some problems in the transmission systems are being faced. So we have to think of whether we can design that type of the cabling system or not. But as everybody knows that the underground cabling system is quite costly. So I do not know what solution we will give to the society. Then development of the hybrid plant should be more. It will maximize the use of the transmission system as well as the precious land resources. When the new developments take place, the testing facilities are generally not available in the country. So simultaneously, the testing facility also need to be improved. Some of the things I would like to miss because all those have been covered by other speakers. And some of the R&D areas which could be targeted. So we will be producing a chapter in the National Electricity Plan, and that will be in the public domain available to all, and maybe for it will come for comments also. So here also I will feel it's my duty to tell that some of the new areas where it could the R&D area this should be focused. Development of ancillary parts required for manufacture of RE technology. Not only the main solar cells and solar modules, but the ancillary parts should also be developed here in India itself. Okay. Fortunately, in case of the wind, we have achieved as high as 80% of the indigenization. So that is a remarkable. Similar transformation is required in the field of the solar also. Then development of the HVDC converter transformers. Here some development is taking place, but the players are less and there is lesser indigenization. More indigenization is needed and can be
Mr. Rajput. I think you have covered the very big area, and I can understand your enthusiasm to put in all the issues.
Yes.
I will ask you only two questions because I as a moderator, it is my duty that the last panelist does get enough time, because this is what happens, So keeping that in mind, I will pose two questions to you.
Yes.
And that is, you very nicely covered about PSPs and smart distribution, optimal capacity expansion and everything. So the two questions are, why are we not giving emphasis on demand response? Because that is the cheapest way of capacity expansion. The associated question to that is, which you also raised, is the distribution system operator. When can we have that distribution system operator? These institutions are extremely important, the way we have seen these four institutions in this panel. So that was the other thing. One more point which I want to raise is, how do we develop intrinsic capability in the country to do variety of studies, simulations? They are all good, we rely on many institutions and labs. That's good, but we must develop our own. So what is your view on these two issues? Very focused, and then I will move on to the next panel.
Sir, I would start from the third question first, if you permit. Today itself, about 2 hours back, I have written a letter to all the heads of the VSUs. That is, we are in constant touch with the office of PSA, Principal Scientific Advisor. I am hopeful that something will come and something useful will come. As regard to distribution system operator, it is a must. It should be, because distribution, our say all states, our every DISCOM is even larger than a smaller country of the world. So why we should not have? And in the distribution and transmission, there is no distinction. Distinction is only because of the licensed area. You give the license up to 11 kV to the transmission, that will become the transmission system. That is the legal position. So that will also come under the transmission system operator. So similarly, we should have, first thing is, maybe people are just happy and inertia is there and they are not demanding. I think voice is not reaching at the right place. So I would suggest that we combinedly raise the voice that there is a need of the distribution system operator. Otherwise, it will be too late if we do not wake up at this stage. And sir, one more question was there. Demand response. It should be done. It can be easily done. Maybe the health of the DISCOMs is not permitting. And sir, one more thing, though in the government, but this free electricity is also a hindrance in the way of the demand response. So those who are say paying, they will feel that we are being restricted, we are being controlled and disciplined in many ways. But those who are say enjoying the electricity, subsidized electricity or the free electricity, they are not being controlled at all. So till that problem is solved, so demand response, I think with the private utilities can do something more first. Particularly,
thank you. I think you have very nicely covered, and I'm so sorry being a moderator to
no, sir.
mankind, but I'm very happy that you said that you need a voice. And these are the panels where the voice of distribution system operator, demand response, intrinsic capability, all these should come up. Thank you very much, Mr. Rajput, for
Thank you, sir.
such a nice coverage.
Now we come to the. I respect each panelist, particularly Narasimhanji. Maybe I have cut his time.
No, we will ensure that he gets enough time. Don't worry about that. That I will take care of. So now we have the last panelist, but one of the important panelists, as Mr. Rajput mentioned, Mr. S.R. Narasimhan. He is the Director System Operation of POSOCO, and he brings along with his, not only system operation, but market operation and governance, and name the entire issues of pool power system. And renewable integration is also one of them. So I would now hand it over to Mr. Narasimhan, and of course we will have some questions subsequent to his presentation. But I would, request him to cover few things which are normally not covered. That is our grid code. That's so very important, but we are not able to communicate because reliability is not having any price tag. And similarly, our say AGC, it's so unfortunate that India did not have AGC. So I know you would cover all much more. So hand it over to you, Mr. Narasimhan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Suni. So first of all, thanks to USAID for having me on this valedictory session. The baton has been handed over to the operator, and I have to run with it for the next 25 to 35 years and beyond. So when we are talking about large scale grid integration, large scale as well as grid integration, it's a long-term problem, like 30, 35 years. We have to ensure that we have put in place all the building blocks, okay, so that we are able to, the system is able to operate. There's no problem for the wind and solar, which is getting connected to the grid as well as to the grid. We are able to operate reliably all these 35 to 50 years. So I'll come, what are the basic building blocks that we possibly now need to look at? I'll look at 4 issues. The first and foremost is the technical standards for connectivity to the grid and the grid code. Both are complementing each other. Now, if you look at the technical standards for connectivity to the grid, which is normally notified by CEA, we had the first one in 2007. The amendment came in 2013 to factor wind. The next came in 2019. Okay, so factor wind, solar, as well as BSS. Now, so every 6-year cycle is there, So now is the time to look back and see, like looking to the next 10 to 20 years, what are all the things that we now need to put in this technical standards, especially on the distributed energy resources. We are fortunate that we have just about 4 gigawatt of rooftop solar today. So we are just on the beginning to rise on the rooftop solar curve. So it's time to put in place the right set of technical standards for DERs, right? And as well as look at what all is missing, grid forming inverters and so many other related issues. So that's, and definitely it should come before 2025. And 6 years is too long a period now. Maybe in the next 1 or 2 years, we must debate this and notify. And the grid code is another thing which complements everything, and already there is a draft grid code 2020, which is before the commission since January 2020. So there we had put a number of, forward-looking something which could take us to 2030, starting from resource adequacy. How do we do it from bottoms up? The DISCOMs, the states, and then regional level, all India level. So this, as we add more wind and solar, this is going to come to the forefront. And already we had this last year, California rolling blackout during the ramping period. And then Texas in February this year. So this is important. The next is, of course, the need to have reserves, primary, secondary, tertiary, and the dimensioning. How much of reserves should be held at the countrywide level? That is also the grid code draft mentioned something about this. And then, of course, the renewables, their ability to provide primary response. We had suggested that anything, all new solar and wind which comes after 1st April 2022 should provide this primary response, and the CA technical standards also support that. They've left it to the regulatory commission to notify the regime. Then, of course, AGC, we have mentioned about AGC at the intrastate level also, how it's absolutely necessary for states which have more than 10 gigawatt of peak load or renewable rich states. So that's something. Field testing for model validation, that's another important area, like how the equipment behaves, how wind and solar behave for a fault on the transmission system is very important. We must take some lessons from the September 2016 South Australia incident, the 9th August 2019 UK incident. So these are areas where we need to understand this through field testing and everything. Then unit commitment, that's also going to occupy center stage. RE curtailment, that was one of the issues. How do we transparently, both the State Load Dispatch Center and RLDC need to transparently indicate the details of RE curtailment on the public domain. Cyber security, compliance monitoring, that's very important. You can have all these standards, but without a compliance monitoring mechanism, they mean less. So the point here is this draft grid code is there since January 2020, but we have integrated 100 gigawatt out of 175 gigawatt. So it's time that this is notified at the earliest. It's already, it's a very important building block that we need to have in place. And of course, the CA also, the technical standards we need to work on. What are the other extra things that we need? So this was the first issue. If we look at a long-term perspective, we need to have this building block correctly. The second is, of course, I'll not talk much about transmission planning, but currently the focus seems to be more of, the short-term targets, how the transmission is built before all the SECI tenders, all the wind and solar awarded in the SECI tenders, before they come on stream, the transmission needs to be built, and it comes through competitive bidding. So with all the time lines associated with that. So we are focusing on the short term, but it's time to look back, sit back and see how the grid of 2030 and beyond would look like. After all, we are talking about something like 450 gigawatt of RE by 2030. So we must seriously discuss what would be the shape, because ultimately only that would, if we devote more time towards that, we would optimally build the transmission and we would ensure reliability for the system operator also. The job becomes much easier, and that's where storage, Dr. Subir Sen did mention, how do we factor storage also in this entire scheme of things. So that's on the transmission planning, because with so much of uncertainty you would have, the flow patterns would totally change, and this is evident from the two incidents of system separations that we have had in continental Europe in January 2021 and 24 July 2021. So two system separations, and all the flow pattern was unusual, and of course it could be anything, a festival in one part of the system, a heat wave in one part of the grid. So large grids have this problem. So many uncertainties that every day the flow pattern would change, making the operators also have to be on their feet to anticipate this. So lot of it we need to anticipate in advance and have the transmission also built in that fashion. Of course, it's not possible to look at all the scenarios, but definitely we must do a thorough check. So that's the second one on transmission planning. The third is, of course, visualization and situational awareness. How do we visualize such a large system? And the operators, they need all the tools at their command. And of course, without ensuring that there's no information overload. And even on this continental Europe, two separations, the positive part was that the systems could be synchronized in 35 minutes to 1 hour. That all happened because of excellent coordination between all the system operators and the situational awareness system which they had, the tools that they had, that was responsible for. So of course, in India also, we had the example of the 5th April 2020 lights out incident, 9 p.m., 9 minutes. That was also possible through the excellent coordination between all the control centers. So that's something on which we need to continuously work. It's not a one-off kind of thing. So each hour, the system has to be operated reliably. The fourth, of course, is, with solar and battery storage, the issues around disposal, safe disposal. And you may wonder why, how is it related to grid integration? But if you recollect that in the FGD, the flue gas desulfurization equipment, which had to be installed by the coal-fired plants, we had to really plan, there was a fear that it would lead to capacity shortages because of number of units going out. So 25 years down the line, when all the solar which is coming, they would start reducing in phases, and the battery disposal 10-year or 15-year. So during that time, we would have some problems. Of course, we have time to ponder over this, but is there anything that we need to put in our bid documents and everything, to take care of these issues? In nuclear power plants, there was a small decommissioning levy, which was charged in the tariff. But when it comes to wind and solar and battery energy storage, we need to think about this issue so that the next generation doesn't feel. So I'll stop here. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Narasimhan. Very nicely you have covered, starting from standards to code to transmission of 2030, and not only that, that decommissioning, that's also, environment is an issue, and compliance monitoring, that's where we are weak as a country. And yeah, so unit commitment, I mean, you have touched so many issues are there. I'll ask you a few questions, starting from what Mr. Baba mentioned, and then one after another, everybody mentioned. How do we make, states, aware of all these things? How do we build their intrinsic capability? And how do we put systems and processes inside the state? That's the challenge, it appears to me. So what's your thought process on that?
Yes, certainly on the capacity building part, a lot of exercises, the RLDCs and NLDCs, they are constantly engaged with the state load dispatch centers. And definitely on the simulation side, there is a good amount of experience across all the state load dispatch centers. But the important issue here is that the responsibilities on all the entities in the sector, that needs to be fixed in the grid code and these documents. The moment there is a responsibility on the state load dispatch center to forecast and evaluate and maintain the reserves. We have an intrastate, you can't be keeping all the reserves at the central level, they have to be distributed. So once they start doing that, the resource adequacy part, the templates are there readily and people work on that, then a lot of things would follow, and definitely, like I mentioned about this governor testing was also one project that we had taken up in the last 2 years, and ultimately the state load dispatch centers also have to do a similar exercise for the intra-state generating units. So all the coordination, like the POSOCO through its RLDCs and NLDC, they are sharing with the SLDCs all the experience, and at the RLDC, a number of workshops are organized. But what's important is that the responsibilities need to be clearly listed out in the grid code and the compliance monitoring part, and all the capacity building, we are always there, and in fact, we have to learn from each other, rather than.
Thank you very much. I think your end note is the most important. We have to learn from each other. There are good practices at the state level, and the grid code, I think this new grid code, we have lots of expectation from it. The clear demarcation of responsibilities and the new kinds of regulations, compliance monitoring, all these things are essential for us to have sustainable roadmap for our integration. Thank you very much. I would now skip all other questions, though there are many, but I would like to sum up saying that it has been a wonderful hour and a half discussion, starting from policymakers, Mr. Mrityunjay Narayan talking about EV, cooking, green hydrogen, and all such things, and then Dr. Sen covering the the transient resilience, reliability, inertia, regulations, and storage in transmission. Very wide coverage, lot of responsibility on that aspect. And then Mr. Rajput very nicely covered plethora of topics, and each one is important. But some of them which he concluded with was that we need demand response, we need pump storage, we need other storage, and optimal capacity expansion is not a one-time exercise. It has to be done again and again, and we need DRs and DSOs. And he very categorically said that we are late on it. And then finally, Mr. Narasimhan has summed up with the last lap, saying about the grid code, the standards, the curtailment, the compliance monitoring, and transmission of 2030. I think that's a very fascinating thing. The younger generation should definitely look at it. 2030 is not very far off. It will come with a blink of eye. So with this, I thank each and every panelist. You all have been very cooperative. And with this, I hand it over back to the organizer, Ms. Monali, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suni, and all the panel members. Extremely interesting discussion. So many pointers for me also to note. I mean, each of the members brought so much of wealth of knowledge and clear, things which needs to be done. So thank you, and thank you, Suni sir, again for excellent moderation as always. Really appreciate your support and throughout the Greening the Grid journey, and Mr. Narasimhan and Mr. Rajput as well. I will quickly do a sort of a vote of thanks for the entire GTG journey as well as for the event, and then we can wrap up this session. So first and foremost, let me thank, I need to get my list in front of me for this. So let me first thank Ministry of Power, Joint Secretary Narayan and Gautam Ghosh, Director MOP, for their extended support to the Greening the Grid program, the Project Advisory Committee, which has been set up by the ministry. At POSOCO, obviously, POSOCO was a key counterpart for Greening the Grid. So within the POSOCO team, Babaji, Suni sir, Narasimhanji, Saxena sir, Bapandaja, PK Agarwal sir, and many more. I'm not even able to take all the names because each and every member contributed so much to the entire journey and each of the work, whether it was study, papers, or the pilot. So thank you, all of you. At CRC, again, another key stakeholder, I'd like to thank Mr. Sanoj Jha, Pujari sir, Dr. Chatterjee, Rashmi, Ravi, and all the team members at CRC. At PowerGrid again, Subir ji, Manish Tiwari on the collaboration on the best pilot. At CEA, again, lots of thanks to Saxena ji, Rajput ji, and at other state partners, KPCL, KPTCL, GSCCL, our partners, BSES, both Rajdhani as well as Yamuna, all the grantees who are part of the GTG journey, and most importantly, the implementing partners, the partners who made all this possible. So Deloitte, thank you so much. And NREL, USCA, NARUC, PRDC, IDAM, all of those who have contributed to this, the success of the program and through the journey. My colleagues at USAID, Michael Sartin, he is moved on to Washington, but you know, I need to mention him, Michael Sartin, and other colleagues at USAID. And lastly, for this particular event, let me thank all these speakers, moderators, presenters, and GTG RISE team, particularly for taking a big load of organizing this event on a virtual platform. It would have been nice to meet all of you in person since we had a great launch. And similarly, it would have been nice to meet everybody on a personal note, but hopefully we'll be able to do so soon. For this particular event, let me thank Bhupi, Tushar, Shubhranshu, and the team for making Kakoli, for making all this possible. And the platform organizer, Keystone, has been a great experience, as well as Full Moon Production for all the wonderful videos which were created. With that, let me thank everybody, all the participants who have joined in. And I would request everybody to join in one more last time for the side event, which we have scheduled at 6:30 p.m. today, where we talk about what's the role of private sector in all these, which has been mentioned by our eminent panel today. So thank you so much for joining, and look forward to seeing you back at 6:30. Thank you.